Welcome to another edition of Be Civil Podcast. I got with me today my good friend Jess Hild. Jess, thank you so much for wanting to do this.
Of course.
You are one of my Virginia boys. Jess and I have in common that we were raised in Virginia. I was born in New York, but I grew up in Virginia. That's where I have some solid roots. So me and Jeff connect on that. I grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia. He grew up in Richmond. And that's a big point where we connect. We have that VA boy swag.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Love you, brother.
You too, bro. You too.
Yeah, let's get talking. And one thing that I want to talk about with you is, well, first of all, let's tell everyone who you are.
Sure.
Who are you?
I'm Jess. I'm 27. I moved to Tampa about almost 3 years ago. I work in commercial insurance here. Kind of just moved on a whim, peak COVID. Kind of found a home here. So, yeah, really enjoying being a Florida boy now, I guess, you know?
Me too, man. I kind of traded my jersey, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super
different.
New York to Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife makes fun of me sometimes because I get really cold now when it's say 70 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember when our aunt from Florida would come to visit Virginia for Christmas, and we'd wake up so hot in the middle of the night because she would have upped the temperature a couple notches. And when I was home, I was doing the same exact stuff.
Yeah.
Our blood has thinned out for sure.
Yeah. Once you move here, like you said, you turn into a Florida boy. And
yeah.
I love it, man. I love life in Florida. How did you find out about Tampa? Were you in Richmond before this?
So I was actually, after I graduated, I moved to D.C., close by home, big city.
Oh, yeah.
So I went from college back to D.C., so it was a 2-hour train ride to Richmond. So very, very close by. But then COVID hit and everyone moved back home essentially, you know? So I was back in Virginia and basically started looking at jobs in, Richmond. I got my real estate license in Virginia. I started getting some job offers, and I was about to just settle down and move back to that little comfortable world of mine. And then I just kind of found out about an opportunity down here. They flew me down here, and I met the team and kind of, we went to dinner at American Social, went to Bella's. We just bopped around Bayshore, and it was just a really good kind of inviting vibe down here. And I was just at that spot in my life where I was ready to take a chance. I was 24, about to be 25, and just sort of pulled the trigger on a new adventure, knowing that Richmond's kind of always there, So yeah, and then 2.5, almost 3 years later, here we are. So it's worked out for sure.
So, long story short, you stepped outside your comfort zone and you took a chance on a place that you found to be interesting, exciting, and possible new home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like you found that sense of reward in the risk that you took to come here and kind of leave your comfort zone, enter a new space where you don't really know anything?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think a lot of life is about leaps of faith and just trying to, you're always calculating risk, reward, and trying to make your best judgment call, whether it's hour to hour, day to day, or just big picture. For me, again, I just felt like Virginia was always going to be there if I wanted to go back to it. And I'm just happy that I did kind of take the route of moving here. I knew zero people, and now I've got some great friends for life, and, met just a whole bunch of other avenues that have enhanced me, just as a person. So it's been good.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
So, one of the things I want to talk to you about was you recommended to me a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Stutz. It's a documentary about that Jonah Hill created.
Yep.
About his therapist, and this therapist he spent some time doing as a therapist for some inmates in Rikers Island.
Yep.
And his approach is just like really amazing. Like one thing I was actually talking to one of my clients about the other day was like, he was telling me about, who he was in the past, and like, this client of mine, he had made a lot of changes in his life, and for the better.
Right.
And then he was like, he looked back at himself and he was like, oh, like that person, I can't believe I was that person. And I was like, well, I brought up the point that Stutz had about the person that you used to be.
Right. Yep.
It's called what?
I don't remember what it's called, but
it's called your shadow.
It's like Jonah Hill looking at himself as like the fat 14-year-old boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember that.
It's called your shadow.
Right.
And like, it's the person that you used to be before you evolved to where you are now. And that person that you used to be, that shadow,
right,
is someone that it's good to revisit, and pay gratitude and to that person, because when it comes down to it, that person was the reason why you are who you are today.
Absolutely.
That person made the decision to take all the steps to get you to your evolved self of who you are now.
Yep.
So it's a beautiful thing, man. Like, we can't look at ourselves and with regret. We have to look at ourselves and be like, oh, this is where I was at this time in my life.
Yeah.
And it may not have been the best version of myself, but it's who I was at that time, and I need to treat that person with love when that person comes to my mind.
Yep.
So it's really interesting. Do you have any could you share any type of experience like yourself with that person? Like, do you have any like relative? It could be something small. It could be a small breakthrough or something that you had in your life. Is there anything that you could share about that?
The only two things that come to mind would be, I always had like a messed up jaw. I always had like a big underbite, cross bite, and I love having good teeth. So I always hated having like bad teeth or bad jaw alignment, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2013, I actually got mugged in Atlanta.
What?
And it made it even worse. And so it got to the point where I had to have jaw surgery and was like wired shut for like 8 whole weeks, drinking through a tube. Like, it was intense. But
you had like the Kanye surgery
through the wire, baby. But
through the wire. Oh my god.
I think that was just kind of adding insult to injury of something that I was already kind of working with. Like, anyway, but I think that whole kind of image of myself is just like a very weak physically and also just like mentally, I guess, at that point in my life. And so to get through that was kind of a pivotal time for me, I would guess. And so I think that, what I would say to that person is just that this is just kind of a stepstone in making a stronger you,
Right.
Is I guess what comes to mind. So that was definitely a dark period for a number of reasons. Self-worth, how do you view yourself in the mirror, all that stuff. And I couldn't even separate my jaw.
Wow.
The moment that it happened, I, thought it could have been even worse, you know, in the middle of downtown Atlanta. But it all worked out for the better. And so it all just goes back to like I think about Jonah Hill talking about his, you know, how it kind of like affected his relationship with his mom. Like, my mom was the one that was like, you should really do this. You know, you don't want to be living with this messed up jaw your whole life. Rather get it done now, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And then that incident in Atlanta happened where I was forced to do it.
Wow.
But anyway, I just, you know, I think
she suggested that you get that operation done to correct your jaw.
Yeah, it was just kind of millimeter by millimeter getting offset as I was going through my adolescent years. And then when that happened, I was 18 in 2013. Is that right? Yeah. So that was just sort of the moment where it was like, okay, now we really got to get it done. Because now this isn't like your bone structure just being off. It's like you got hit in the face really hard, you know?
I find that really interesting how she suggested that you do it.
Yeah.
And then, like, it just came to you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that, you know, through getting mugged.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I have questions. So
yeah. For another time.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to unpack with Stutz.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. We'll say it for another time. But I just want to say I find it really interesting that that she suggested it and then it ended up happening to you in life. It's almost as if you were destined to go through what you went through with your jaw.
Correct.
To get to the next level. You were destined to like experience what you experienced to get to the next level of who you are. That's really amazing to me.
Yeah.
And that's just how life works. And that's how, like, if you know, knowing you, I feel like you are looking back and appreciating that time. As far as, like, you know, you're saying that time helped to mold you.
For sure.
So I think that is really amazing. How something, you know, so terrible as like a mugging.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, you having to go through, you know, your jaws being wired. You know, everything that comes with that, experiencing that. Also, it's like you can't talk.
Right.
Or maybe, you know, could you talk at all?
You could talk, but just like imagine if your molars just can't move. Yeah, you're talking like this all the time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's gotta, like, fuck with you.
Yeah, it was heavy for sure.
Wow.
But I think that, you know how...
it's gotta be really frustrating.
Remember that part in Stutz where they're talking about how you have, like, that black rain cloud over you, and then you, like, basically have that little sliver through it where you can see, like, the sunshine and all of that. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that, but I forgot what it all led to.
I think it's essentially talking about how, I think there's like I think he said 3 things. I don't know if I can remember them all, but kind of things that you can't, you know, plan for, but you have to accept are an everyday part of life, which is you're going to experience some uncertainty or loss. Mm-hmm. And 2, I'm not going to remember the third one, but the second one was like you have to accept that you have to work your entire life, whether it's like on your job or your career, like advancing your profession, or whether it's like changing a diaper and flipping the laundry and going to the grocery store. But like life is constant work. Essentially, there's no easy route, no matter if you view it of like we're struggling to even make ends meet and put food on the table, or like you're a super loaded rich dude and you still have to like go to board meetings and do your own laundry or whatever it is. It's just essentially applicable to everybody in everyday life.
In some type of way.
Yeah, and so when...
You have to give effort.
Yeah, and so when that bad thing when the world feels like it's coming down on you, right, with that big black cloud. I don't remember, but it was one of those tools that he used to like refocus, and it's basically just deeply embedded in gratitude, right? And so I think for me, when I moved here, the first 8 months, it was a 1-bedroom apartment. Again, I knew 0 people, and so I think just like a lot of that mental fortitude to kind of get through the adjustment of just moving here on a whim, especially during COVID as well.
Yeah.
Took a lot of just checking in with family and friends and just looking yourself in the mirror and, you know, putting yourself out there. And I think a lot of that is just grounded in my parents for raising me well, and then just ultimately gratitude and love, you know, I think.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Gratitude and love.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
what gets us through.
Yeah, but that documentary I watched by myself the first time, and then I was with my mom the next week, and we watched it together, and she was just like, she was crying like 2 or 3 different times throughout the movie, because it is that powerful, bro.
Me too.
Yeah.
I cried through it, for sure.
Yeah.
There's so many like relative, you know, points, and like, you know,
I love Jonah and Phil's relationship.
me too, man.
Yeah.
Me too. They're just like, you know,
He's what, 74, and he has Parkinson's disease,
yeah,
and this guy Jonah Hill, all the money, all the fame, anything he could ever want, he has.
yeah,
And yet he's like found solace in this man who has just given him the tools to like get himself out of any situation mentally,
yeah,
you know? And
Yeah.
I remember that point where he was like, he's like, you go to your therapist for advice, and you go to your friends to just like laugh about it, blah, blah, blah. And yet you go to your friends, they're the ones trying to give you advice. You go to your therapist, and the therapist is like, you know, just like chatting it
Right.
up with you about all this stuff.
right,
So it's kind of hilarious how your friends are always quick to be the ones that like, I know what's right for you because I know you.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. Like that to me, it was also like an awakening point. It made me want to become a better listener,
Totally.
because like, yeah, like, you know, someone comes to you, someone that you care about, and like, you know, you want to initially remedy the problem.
Totally.
And it's all out of love. I
Yeah.
feel like it's all learning. Like, you know, we're just so used to like wanting the remedy
Yeah.
instead of just like an open ear, which, you know, that I feel like, I think he said we go to our therapists for advice,
Yeah.
and we go to our friends to listen.
That's
But we
right.
go to our therapist and he listens, and our friends give us advice.
That's what it is.
And it's like, it's so true, man. It's so true. And it's so nice, like, you know, when you do go to therapy and like that therapist is just listening and you're just venting, and, you know, they're listening to you. They're not telling you how to get through it. You know, they're not really like, they're letting you speak, and they're letting you, you know, share your emotions without, you know, telling you how to, you know, survive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
No, it's cool. It's a really good flick. It seems to really flow naturally, and I think this might be a spoiler alert, but I think that, you know, the point where he basically tells Stutz, he's like, look, man, I keep telling you that everything's going great and that the movie's coming along really nicely, but I'm wearing a wig to make it seem like I'm, you know, we've been doing this for 2 years, and the reality is we're not in your office. We're at a green screen.
then the green screen is on the entire.
Yeah, and it's
Oops,
like,
sorry, you spoiled it.
yep. It's
Sorry.
like, we don't, you know, I don't have this hair. I really have really short hair. I'm wearing a wig to pretend like I still have this big curly afro. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, the really cool thing to me that connected both of them, they both lost their brothers.
Oh.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And so Phil grew up with, like, you know, an abusive father and like a mother that would rather read a book and like pretend the outside world doesn't exist.
And
and
she
then-
also had a difficult. She had a bad experience with romantic relationships with men.
Yeah.
So she kind of demonized men.
You're correct.
And then he took that on because he was like, "Oh, I'm a man."
Yeah.
So it kind of messed him up.
Yep. And then the other part that was cool about that was, man, maybe it's because he had lost his brother, but when Jonah Hill lost his brother 3-4 years ago and he came into Phil's office, Phil took a picture of him. You remember that? And he was just like, it's very rare you get to capture the face of someone in a moment in their life that is so profound and just terrible, and just like the raw emotion on their face.
Yeah.
Remember that? So they're just bonded. They have such a good bond.
Yeah. And they're also such opposite personalities. I feel like they're a fine example of how opposites attract.
Yeah.
Such a mind-expanding, emotionally opening piece of film there.
Yeah. I just loved how vulnerable they were able to be with each other, and like how he had initially planned to just keep this guy in his mid-70s just like out of the loop about it and tell him it's great, it's going well, and then finally just be like, dude, you've become like one of my most trusted confidants, I love you, I care for you. This is the reality of how the movie's going. Like, I want to do this with you. I don't want to be Jonah Hill, the like actor, filmmaker. I want to let you in on like the creative process, because I want to like, this isn't about me. This is about you.
Right.
So that was so cool how he finally just let him in. He's like, I was thinking we could do this.
I feel like they kind of switched roles at a point also.
Yeah, I agree.
When I feel like Stutz himself became vulnerable. And
when they were talking about his relationship with that woman.
Yeah, and he became vulnerable, and he was like, he was just like addressing the situation with her, and that he had with just females, like we were talking about with his mom earlier. Like what he went through with her.
Yeah.
And her outlook and everything. So yeah, man. It's really interesting how they just kind of switched roles, and it was almost as if Jonah was a therapist, and Stutz was the patient after a while.
Yeah.
So it shows that they equally serve each other as humans, just like hearing each other out and helping each other navigate through life.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. I want to say on that note, thank you for doing this.
For sure.
And thank you for really suggesting that film to me. Like that really helped me personally.
You're welcome.
Look at like my life and help me navigate through my life. I appreciate and love you, brother.
Of course. Love you too, bro. Of course. It was awesome.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Be civil.
See you guys.